So now let's have a look at some of the drawing tools of AutoCAD, and we'll start it with the rectangular array command. So here we have a set of objects, which is the desk arrangement of an office chair and PC, and we want to make multiple copies of this object in such a way that it looks like the floor arrangement of an office space. For that, I will select the array tool. So go to the modify panel, select the rectangular array. Now select the complete set of objects from which you want to create the array. Now press enter, and here you will see a default array which you may or may not want. Now in this case, you can increase number of objects in the row as well as in columns, and you can do that dynamically by using these multi-function grips. So here we have these grips. Now let's select this end grip in the horizontal direction, and I'll move it towards right, and you'll notice that number of objects will increase along with this grip. Similarly, you can increase number of objects in the column or in the height direction using the same grip. So let's now move it upwards, and here we have it. So now more objects are added here. Now, what if you want to change the gap between these rows and columns? For that, you can use these grips. So here I can click on this grip and move it closer, and the gap will decrease. Similarly, I can click on this grip and I can decrease or increase the gap. So that's a dynamic way of changing the values, but you can also do it accurately using the array creation tab. So you'll see this array creation tab as long as the command is active, and here we have some of the options, like we have number of columns, rows and levels. So let's start with number of columns, which is currently 7. So let's change this value to 8. Now press tab key. Okay. Now after that, we have the spacing between these columns, which is set to 2387 units. Now what if we want these objects to remain very close to each other? For that, we need to change this value. We need to decrease it actually. So I'll change it to 1500. Now press tab key again, and now they are touching each other. So that's the arrangement which I want. Now the total distance will automatically adjust depending upon the number of objects or number of columns here. Now let's move on to rows. So here we have these 4 rows. Let's change it to 3. And now we have here the gap between different rows, which is 2696 units. So let's increase it a little bit, and I'll change it to 3000 units. Press tab key, and the total distance will change accordingly. And here we have the new gap here. Now we have the levels, and levels are simply the number of objects in the z-axis, which will not be visible as long as you are in this 2D space. And we have this associative option. So you can keep this option checked if you want to keep this array editable, and if you want that the array should not remain editable, then keep on this option unchecked. But now I'll keep it checked, and let's now click on close array. So here we have this complete set of objects as a single array. Now even when you click on any of these objects from this array, the complete set will be selected, and the array tab will appear with these options. Now you can again modify the values in this row and column, and you also have some of the additional options here. So using these options, you can even modify it further. For example, let's say that we want to add some extra part in this source object. So for that, we can select this edit source option, and now select the item on which you want to make the modification. So I'll select this object here, and let's click on OK. So here we have this array. Now we can modify it. So in order to modify it, I'll select the circle tool, and I'll make a small circle here. So that will act as a small gap here, which is used for the cables in the table, and I'll copy it over here as well. Okay, now this is the final geometry, and the same set of object will be visible here. So as soon as you add any modification in the source object, the change will be propagated in all the arrayed objects here everywhere. Now in order to save this, go to this last panel and click on save changes, and here we have it. The changes are saved, and now all the arrayed elements are now similar. In these cases, the gap between the array row and array column is simply the gap between any two corresponding points. So in the initial case, we have applied an array row gap of 3000 units, which is the gap between any two corresponding points. So for example, if you take this top left point as any reference point, then the distance between this top left and the second top left point will be 3000 units. Similarly, for the columns, the corresponding distance between the points will be equal to the gap which you have specified. So here we have this top left corner, so the gap between this top left corner and the top left corner of the second object will be equal to 1500 units, which we have specified. So this was all about the rectangular array tool of AutoCAD.